All right, welcome into D&D's two-man game. I am your host Damon, and as you may notice, we are without our co-host Dom today, sadly. Dom, very busy man, 9 to 5 job, and full-time singer, songwriter, recorder for his band. He is unfortunately not able to make it today, so I'm going to be riding solo. Now, never done anything like this, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe the quality suffers without Dom's presence. D&D's two-man game now has one man, so we'll see how it goes. In honor of Dom, I would like to do a shirt reveal, as he loves to do. I'm rocking my Rockets Pride shirt today, as well as my Summer League hat. If you're not watching, go check it out on the YouTube channel. Although I know it's a little easier sometimes if you're driving or cleaning or something to just toss it on Spotify, but do go check us out on YouTube as well, or vice versa. So, last week and the week before, Dom and I were doing some rankings. We did point guards 2 weeks ago, shooting guards last week, and now this week we were going to do small forwards. Fortunately, Dom couldn't make it, so I've decided to switch it up a little bit. I am going to do what I like to call a 30 for 30. So I have one question that I have come up with for every NBA team. I'm going to say what that question is, and then I'm going to kind of do my best to predict the answer for that question. I did this last night. I kind of went through and looked at all the teams and all the rosters again, and I thought, what is the most important question, a key question, to answer for the NBA teams this upcoming season? And we'll kind of see how it goes. Now, I obviously doing a solo podcast will be talking for a long time. I have my gallon of water here prepared, so if you hear any breaks or anything, if you hear silence for a couple seconds, your podcast is probably still working. I just may have stopped to take a drink or something like that, or maybe my brain just stopped working because I am doing a lot of talking, and I can't do the back and forth that Dom and I usually have. It's like my favorite part of the podcast. Really missing him here today, but we'll see. So, I have my questions prepared, my document pulled up. What I would like to do is rather than go in any sort of order, I have a randomizer. Now, I'm not going to be able to show you guys this randomizer just because I have it pulled up on my other monitor. And I wanted to kind of just do this simply, so I'm not recording on any advanced device that I can do screen sharing with. Dom and I usually do this through Zoom, and on Zoom it's really easy to screen share, and I didn't want to kind of do that today and bounce back and forth between the camera on myself, the wheel, the questions. So I'll just spin and tell you what it is. So let's see. Our first team is pick number 20, the Orlando Magic. That is what I got. Orlando Magic. Okay. Now let me go here to my questions. Orlando Magic. My question is one of the more boring ones. What will their rotation look like this season? And Dom and I have kind of talked about this in the pod, but the Magic are an interesting team. They have a lot of players that we like and that I like, but they haven't really identified who their guys are that they want to invest in long term. I think everyone clearly likes Paolo Banchero. He is clearly the number one option. I think Franz Wagner is probably clearly the small forward. I think Wendell Carter is probably clearly the center. So it's really the guards that we're focusing on here. Markelle Fultz has kind of been their starter when healthy, but they did just draft Anthony Black with the 6th pick. They drafted Jet Howard, I believe, with the 11th pick. They have other guards as well. Jalen Suggs they got, number 4 a couple of years ago. They have Cole Anthony, who's been good for them. So they have a lot of good guys in that backcourt, and I'm not sure how their rotation is going to kind of flush out as the season goes. I don't know how much it'll change. My prediction, I guess, if I were to make a prediction, I already kind of gave you the front court, but I think Markelle Fultz will start as long as he's healthy. I think he'll probably keep a grasp of that job. And then that shooting guard spot, I'm not sure. Between Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs, even guys like Admiral Schofield played for them last year, I don't know who they're going to plug in at that guard spot. They could run 2 kind of point guard-esque players back there because Their front court of Franz, Paulo, and Wendell is so big that they could probably get away with running two kind of smaller guards. But we'll kind of see. Maybe it starts off as Markelle and Cole Anthony, and then as the season goes on, Anthony Black gains some favor being a top 6 pick. Maybe Jalen Suggs bounces back. Not sure. So yeah, that team, that's a tough question because I'm not sure what their rotation looked like. That's kind of what I wanted to ask. All right, next I will pick number 3, Dallas Mavericks. All right, so Dallas Mavericks. My question for them was, how much patience does Luka have? Luka, I think, coming into the league, being so talented immediately, he was Rookie of the Year, and then right after that, it was All-NBA First Team, All-NBA First Team, All-NBA First Team. He's just been kind of a rock star ever since joining the league, and that has kind of put the Mavericks in a tough position because it's hard for them to rebuild because Luka is so good. He started in his second year carrying them to the playoffs. So, a little worried about, his patience long term. Obviously, last year they missed the playoffs entirely. They traded for Kyrie at the deadline and missed the playoffs. Obviously that's probably annoying to someone like Luka who wants to have a, long successful career and make a lot of playoff runs. So, how much patience does he have? It seems okay for now, but I think okay can become not okay very quickly, as we have seen with superstars recently. You look at the Brooklyn Nets situation when they had Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie. All 3 of those guys are gone now. Obviously, their temperaments are a little bit different than Luka, but I do think it's important to note that they had the one conference finals appearance. And aside from that, they haven't had like a ton of playoff success, even though Luka himself has been really great. He's been a top 10 player in the NBA for 4 seasons in a row. And I predict he'll continue to do that. So how much patience does he have with the Mavericks before, he wants out or it even gets to the point where he just walks in free agency? That's kind of what I'm curious about to see for this upcoming season. Hopefully they can find some success and kind of push those questions off. But eventually Luka is going to want to win, I imagine. So. Yeah. All right. Next. I got 3 and 20. Next, I'll go 13. Minnesota Timberwolves. I could have went a couple different ways with this question. I thought about talking about Anthony Edwards, but I know that's Dom, one of Dom's guys, so I went with something that was asked a lot last year. Can Cat and Gobert actually work? And what I mean by this is, what can the Timberwolves do with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert to make them function on the court together? I think Anthony Edwards can clearly be the alpha of this team. I think he can make it work as a slasher, as a shooter, and I think he can even develop as a facilitator. But can that happen while Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert are on the floor together? That I'm not so sure of. They traded a lot to get Rudy Gobert. There is nothing they can trade that will get those assets back. But, I think Karl Anthony Towns is kind of now the odd man out because he's more valuable than Rudy. Can they make it work on the court? And if not, what's the next step? Do they trade Cat? Do they try to recoup some of those losses? I don't know. We will see. My prediction for the Timberwolves would be that they probably finish kind of similarly to what they've been doing on the lower seed, 7, 8, 9 seed. I don't think with Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert you can really be a championship team. How long before the Timberwolves realize that and try to fix that and address that issue? I don't know. Will it happen this season? Maybe. Alright, next I'll do number 22. Boston Celtics. This is a good question. Can they get over the hump with Porzingis on their team? Boston has continually had success in the Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown era. Conference finals after conference finals, and then of course they had the finals run a couple years ago against the Warriors, but they have not won a ring in this era at least. So, is the Porzingis trade what does it? Now, when I think about this, I think, is this team better than the finals team? And I think it depends. It depends, right? I think the range of outcomes is wider. What I mean by that is I think their floor is probably lower. I think there's a world where the Celtics finishes the 4 or 5 seed and they only make the second round, and that could be because of an injury to someone like Porzingis. However, I think their ceiling, assuming everyone stays healthy, is a lot higher. I think that you get through a year in which you have Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Porzingis, Robert Williams, and they're all relatively healthy. I think they can finish as a top 2 seed and make it to the finals again. And I think in that finals they would have a better chance than they did against the Warriors because the range of talent on their team. So that's what I mean when I say I think the range of outcomes is higher. Can they finally get over the hump? Right now, I would say they're probably my favorite in the East, which I know is not really like a super hot take or anything, especially with all the success they've had in the previous years. But we'll see. We'll see. I think there's definitely a chance. I think the West can beat each other up as the season kind of progresses. So we'll see kind of how the Celtics do, and if Porzingis can help that, assuming he is healthy, of course. I think they're going to be an exciting team to watch this season. Alright, next on my little number thing, I'll do... I haven't done any of these last numbers. I'll do 25. New York Knicks. Okay, the Knicks, my question I have for them, what kind of player will RJ Barrett be? This is a question that I asked because I really like RJ Barrett. I think he's talented. I think he has kind of went up and down in his career. I think early on he showed a lot of potential and then kind of never met that potential. And then last year in the playoffs, he kind of showed up finally. And the Knicks, had the most success that they've had in a while. So what kind of player can RJ Barrett be? Can he reach someone like I was just talking about, Jaylen Brown, for the Celtics? Can he be that kind of player where he's an elite offensive weapon and shot creator, but also very reliable on the defensive side of the ball? Maybe. It took Jaylen Brown a while to get there too. And it's difficult too when you think about this because right now it's Julius Randle just had another All-NBA season. Jalen Brunson had a really great playoffs. He will probably push for an All-Star conversation next year. I think both of those players are a little more clear to me, which is why my question for this team was, what kind of player can RJ Barrett be? It's tough. I believe in RJ Barrett. I think he can be really good. I think he just kind of needs to be given the keys eventually. And I know right now for them trying to make the playoffs, push as the 4 seed, the 5 seed, or whatever, that they're going to give it to guys like Randle and Brunson who have already proven themselves as all-star level talents. But I think if you kind of let RJ Barrett have that opportunity, I think he can maybe prove people wrong. And people don't really remember, but RJ Barrett was like the most touted player out of high school, the same class as Zion. So he was really good. And then him, Zion, and Cam Reddish all went to Duke. So, they've had 3 different careers since then. But he's always been talented. But when will he get a chance to kind of showcase that talent and be a leader? Hopefully sooner rather than later, because I'm excited to see what RJ Barrett can do. Okay. Next. That's 5 teams. I've done the Magic, then the Mavericks, Timberwolves, Celtics, Knicks. Okay. So next I will do number 8, Atlanta Hawks. Alright. So my question for the Hawks, what's their ceiling like? Now, what I mean by this is the Hawks are a team that have, been a little inconsistent in the past couple of years. They have went through a couple different coaches, from Lloyd Pierce to Nate McMillan, now to Quinn Snyder. And they had, an Eastern Conference Finals run a couple of years ago. Since then, a couple of first-round exits. So, it's like, what kind of team will this team be? Are players like Trae Young, is he at his ceiling? Can he get any better? I think the most interesting thing that will contribute to this team's ceiling is the continuity in their backcourt. I think Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, now that he signed an extension, can be a really, really talented backcourt in the NBA. And I think allowing them now to have another season in which they continue to play with one another will hopefully make both of them better. I've talked about before on the podcast Trae Young needing to add the off-ball movement to his game. So hopefully he can do that with DeJounte Murray having more, ball handler responsibilities, and then he can become more of a threat as a player himself. And of course, DeJounte also covers for the, defensive deficits, we'll say, that Trae Young has. So I think their ceiling, if I'm answering my own question here, their ceiling is probably like 3 seed maybe. I don't think they, could uh, take over the Celtics. Definitely, maybe the Bucks with a top 3 player, Giannis on that team. And then you get to teams like the 76ers, who have the James Harden question, the Cavs, who had a good year last year, the Knicks, and I think the Hawks could be there right with those teams as a kind of a 3, 4, 5 seed in the East. So that's probably what their ceiling is. Second round exit, maybe a conference finals appearance if everything goes right. But I don't think they will have what it takes, at least this year, to go all the way. But I'm hoping to see some growth from that backcourt, some continuity, and they can have something excited to look forward to the next couple of years. All right. Next, I'll do. Let's do number 29, Indiana Pacers. My question for this team, I was looking at their team and I was kind of thinking, is there a player I want to focus on? Is it a dynamic? What is it? And my question has ended up being this: will this be the most fun team to watch in the NBA? I think the answer is yes. Right. Tyrese Halliburton, one of my favorite players in the NBA. He has shown a lot of growth in these first couple of years. I think that him for Sabonis trade has been, a win-win for both of those teams. I think Pacers fans have something to be very excited about with him. And then I thought they had a really good offseason. I thought, they got Obi Toppin for very little, and I think him with Tyrese running the court together could be really fun. Buddy Hield, one of the best shooters in the NBA, of course. I really like their draft pick in Jarris Walker. Nembhard had a really good rookie season last year. Benedict Mathurin has been pretty good. So it's like they got a lot of guys on their team that I like and that I think have a lot of potential. And I'm really excited to see, how they fulfill that potential. But also, I think they'll be really, really fun to watch, even if they finish as like a 9 seed, a 10 seed. I think they'll still be a joy. I still think hopefully they'll go out there, they'll have fun, and I think the winning will come. Now, Buddy Hield, of course, is kind of old. Miles Turner just signed a large extension in the in the middle of last season. So they have a couple of older players I'm not sure what they're going to do with. But, you need kind of that balance of youth and veteran leadership on your team in order for the young players to grow. And I think, for now, that will work. Eventually, I think they'll have to make some decisions on who their core guys are outside of Tyrese. I think everybody else, has a question mark associated with them. But I think they'll be really fun to watch. I think they'll have a lot of growth, and I'm looking forward to it. Alright, next let's do number 11 on here, which is the Spurs. The Spurs. My question for the Spurs is not going to surprise anyone that knows anything about the Spurs. Can Victor Wembanyama live up to his insane hype? And it is insane. He is the most highly touted player I've ever seen. And obviously, I think part of that is because the comparisons often go to LeBron, who came in 2003 when I was 7. So, I didn't really have a lot of attention toward the NBA at that point. But also, the age of the internet, the age of social media, I think it is not very easy, but it's easier for players to kind of build this hype because they have videos going all around, they have highlights, they have all kinds of stuff going on. And Wembanyama is like, oh my god, he's raw. And I kind of saw this in person when I went to Summer League. Dom and I went to the first Wembanyama game on, I think it was Friday. Actually, I think it was his second game. Um, but it was the Friday of Summer League. Or no, I'm sorry, it was the Sunday of Summer League. His first game was on Friday, and the game we went to was on Sunday, because that's the day we got there. And it was sold out. The tickets were crazy. It was people up on the second row, which never happens at Summer League. And second row, I mean, the upper levels, the nosebleeds, or whatever you want to call them. People were all around just to see this guy. Coming to Vegas to see him. I know there was the incident with Britney Spears where she, saw him and tried to talk to him, and like his security guard slapped her or something crazy like that. So even people that don't really pay a ton of attention to sports kind of know who he is. Um, I'll hear people now that I live in Austin. They'll know I'm a basketball person. They'll say, "Oh yeah, what about this Wembanyama guy? Is that a legit thing?" I've heard about him, even if they don't pay attention. So I think the answer to this question is easy. The answer is no. I don't think it's possible for him to live up to the amount of hype that he's gotten. At least this year, being a rookie, rookies are rookies, right? There is very rare that you see in any sport a person come in and they're immediately a top 10 player, 20 player, or whatever. I know in basketball a long time ago, Wes Unseld was a rookie and won MVP. Now, that was a different era of the league, and Dom and I talked about eras in basketball and the evolution of basketball and all that, and I think it was episode 4. Basketball's a lot different now. There's 30 teams. Everybody, players nowadays are preparing as soon as they're 4 years old. They start dribbling. So it's a little bit of a different game. So I don't think it's possible for him to live up to this hype. I think people will, nitpick what's going on in his rookie season, whether his shooting efficiency might be kind of poor from the outside. People are going to complain and say, "Get down in the post. What are you doing? You're so tall." And then he's going to be down in the post, and he's going to get, he might be going against the Grizzlies and be against Steven Adams, and Steven Adams is going to just back him under the rim because he's so big and strong, and people are going to be like, "Oh, this guy can't make it. He's a bust." That's just kind of what happens with rookies, especially someone like him who is so young and has so much hype. He kind of has to grow into his body still. He kind of has to adjust from the European League to the NBA. So I think people will probably find issues with him in his rookie year and be disappointed in him. Now, long term, can he live up to the hype? Maybe, but just for this next season, which is the questions I'm talking about are just relating to next season, I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed, but it's not his fault. I think the expectations are so astronomically high that regardless of how he does, people are going to be disappointed by it. All right, next. I'll click number 6. That opens the Thunder. Yeah, so I know I kind of explained earlier I'm not sharing my screen, but basically I have this little randomizer open on my other monitor, and it's just numbered 1 through 30, and it's just the numbers, and when I click on a number, it shows me what team, so that's how I'm doing this. Okay, Thunder. My question. How long is it going to take for this team to be great? I don't think it's going to happen next season, but in 2 seasons, 3 seasons, it's possible. And I know I just said with Wembanyama, these questions were specifically related to next season, but the Thunder are so exciting. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's already a top 10 player in the NBA, finished 5th in MVP voting, I think. They have Josh Giddey, who is kind of building up to be a triple-double machine. He can't shoot very well, but he can get to the rim very easily. He's a good facilitator. He can kind of rebound and start the break. They have Chet, who they drafted last year, that looked pretty good in Summer League, and he's coming into the season healthy for his rookie season, even though it's his second year, because he was injured all last year. And then they have kind of some surrounding pieces. Jalen Williams, who was a really good find in the draft last year, finished 2nd in Rookie of the Year. It's like, wow, this team has the potential to be awesome, and they have that potential to be awesome very soon, I think. I'm really excited about them this year. I know the West is loaded. Dominique and I have talked about that before on this podcast, but I do think that the Thunder kind of have a chance to sneak in at the play-in tournament, maybe at best, and make some noise. And they were in the play-in last year, and I think they'll be even better this year. Give me just a second to drink some water. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, I think the Thunder could be really, really, really good. I think a lot of their pieces are nice. I think they fit together well. How long will it take for them to be great? I don't know. But I think we'll start seeing that sooner than some people probably think. I think some people have them pinned for, like a Rockets kind of season where they're rebuilding. I think they'll be better than that for sure. Alright, next I'm going to do number 17, Cleveland Cavaliers. The question I put down for these guys was specifically related to Evan Mobley. What is his ceiling? This is the question I came up with because I think, for the most part, Donovan Mitchell is the player he's going to be. Darius Garland is probably pretty close. I think he could definitely see a little more growth, but he's probably pretty close to the player he's going to be. Jared Allen, I think, is definitely kind of capped out. So, Evan Mobley, being so young, I think going into his third season now? Fourth season? Maybe fourth? I don't know. It's same year as Jalen Green. I don't remember when that was, though. What's his ceiling? I think it's really high. He finished, as a front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. He's still very young. He's like 22, maybe. But I think his ceiling is a top 20, 15 player in the NBA. I think his offensive game does need to come around a little bit. Playing with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, obviously, he doesn't have a chance to kind of showcase his offensive capabilities. The defense is there, though. The defense is already, like I just said, finished top, 3 in Defensive Player of the Year. So I think as a player, he can definitely get there. I think his ceiling is really high. I'm a little worried about, because the Cavaliers are so talented, that he's not going to get the opportunity he needs to showcase those skills. But I think that Evan Mobley is going to be a really, really, really good player. I think he could finish as the best player out of that draft, ahead of Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green, who are players that I like. And I think the Cavs are going to need that if they want to push far in the playoffs. They got kind of smacked in the face last year against the Knicks in round 1. So this year, if they want to go further, I think they're going to need it to come from Evan Mobley, because I think everyone else probably is going to do similarly to how they did last year. Alright, next I'll do, let's do 27. Lakers, Los Angeles Lakers, oh boy. Question I wrote for these guys. And I originally thought about talking about LeBron, but LeBron has talked about enough, so we'll do something else. My question is, who's going to break out for these guys? Now, I came up with this because I was thinking about the Lakers kind of these past couple seasons. They always find guys. Several years ago, their championship run, Alex Caruso is a big part of that, right? They kind of found him, and he kind of grew into his own. And they did similarly recently with Austin Reeves. They kind of found him, and he's become a very important part of that team. And I think, even last year when they traded the second-round pick for Rui Hachimura, and then he was very good for them in the playoffs. They kind of find guys that either people don't really know about, or Rui's case, struggling elsewhere, and then he came to the Lakers and kind of fulfilled a role that they needed and exceeded in that role. So who's going to be that player for them this year? They signed a lot of guys in the offseason. The guy I'm most excited about, if I were to try to answer this question, is Cam Reddish. I think Cam Reddish is underrated, underutilized, underappreciated. Obviously, I do not know what goes on in NBA locker rooms, but I feel like it has to be something locker room related with Cam. Going from the Hawks to the Knicks to the Blazers, and just kind of bouncing around and now landing here in Los Angeles. I think he can be really good. I mentioned earlier when I was talking about RJ Barrett how him, Zion, and Cam are like the top 3 players in the country, and then they all went to Duke together, and then Cam kind of struggled a little bit in college, and that's why he fell in the draft to the Hawks. I think it was at pick 10. But I think given the right opportunity, he can be good. And playing with LeBron and Anthony Davis, that could be that opportunity. Those are two guys that you're not going to try to supersede. And I don't know if that was an issue for Cam particularly, but if he can find a role and if he can get coached into a role, he's a decent shooter. He can play defense. Those are guys that the Lakers need. I think he could be a really good player for them this year, a really important kind of key rotational part. If the Lakers, of course, uh, give him that opportunity and play him a lot, I think he can be important. I think he can factor into a team that wants to make a deep playoff run. They went to the conference finals last year and then kind of, met the Nuggets, who were terrifying. So if they want to try to do that again and go even further, I think they're going to need a guy to break out, and I think Cam could be that guy. All right, moving on. Next, I'll go number 2. Denver Nuggets. Okay, just talked about them. So, the Nuggets. My question is very simple. Can they repeat? What do they need to do to win the championship again? And this is my question really because the core pieces didn't change much aside from, of course, losing Bruce Brown, which is sad for them. And he did a lot of good things for them. I think for them to repeat, obviously you're going to need, kind of like what I talked about the Cavs. Jokic is going to be Jokic. Jamal Murray is going to be Jamal Murray. Michael Porter's been up and down. Aaron Gordon's really good for them. I think the guy I have my eye on is Christian Braun. I think Christian Braun surprised a lot of people last year being a rookie and playing finals minutes for a team that won the championship, and really important minutes. And I think he kind of, he's going to be in the rotation again. I think he needs to take some of those Bruce Brown responsibilities if the Nuggets want to have a chance to win the finals again, which obviously they do. So, can they repeat? Yes. What needs to happen for that? I think some of those guys like Christian Braun need to take on bigger roles and kind of make up for the people that they lost in the offseason. Okay, next I'll do number 14. Raptors. Okay, Toronto Raptors. My question for them, that I think I know the answer to pretty clearly. Will they regret not trading pieces last season? The answer should be yes. I know Dom and I talked about this before, but I believe it was the Grizzlies offered like 3 or 4 first-round picks for OG Anunoby, and they declined it. I don't think his value will ever be 3 to 4 first-round picks again, and I really like OG as a player. We talked about him in our shooting guard video last week, and I kept saying, I don't know, he could be really good. He could be a top 10 shooting guard. And I know he's traditionally kind of a small forward, but for the Raptors, who play a ton of giant wings, he kind of slots into the shooting guard for them. So yeah, do I think he'll be that player and have that much value? Probably not. And do I think with this current team, Dennis Schroeder, OG, Scotty Barnes, Pascal, Jakob Poeltl, are they a contender? Probably not, right? So are they going to regret not trading people? Yeah. I mean, Fred VanVleet walked away in the offseason to the Rockets because they gave him a ton of money. The Raptors offered him a pretty big contract too, but they couldn't match what the Rockets were going to offer them because they offered him an insane amount. But they could have dealt him at the deadline last year and got something for him. And I think the Raptors are, and another team I'm going to talk about later, are teams that need to realize they don't have what it takes. There's nothing that they can really do, nothing that is like a logical kind of thing you can predict where they're going to win a championship with the people they have right now. So I think they need to ship off OGs of the world, Pascal of the world, and kind of start over. And they have already a young core piece in Scotty Barnes. So they should have traded last season, got some pieces, and kind of jump-started that process. I do think they'll regret that. I think they'll realize that this season when they're halfway through the season, they're the 8th seed. I think they'll kind of come to terms with that. Okay, next I'll do number 5. Sure, Sacramento Kings. Okay, so my question I put for the Sacramento Kings Was last year a fluke? Are they going to regress? And I think the answer is yes. Yes to the regression part. I don't think it was a fluke. I think the Kings are really good. I think they have a lot of good pieces. Love De'Aaron Fox. Love Sabonis. Malik Monk. Kevin Huerter. Didn't love the Harrison Barnes re-signing. I've talked about that. But I don't think that last year was like oh my God, surprise. I do think people were surprised by the fact that they finished all the way at the 3 seed. Like, that is obviously really, really high. People probably weren't expecting that. But at the same time, I don't think that, it was totally out of the realm of possibility. And I think that it can happen again. 3 seed is high, which is why I say yes, they probably will regress. But they're a good team. They're a playoff team. I don't think it was a fluke. I think that they will come back to earth a little bit. I think people will pay more attention to them. Having such a long playoff drought, people probably were not expecting the Kings to kind of come into the season and be one of the teams you have to worry about. But now I think people will have that expectation. So now they're not going to be kind of shocked by the people they see on the court. And I think they'll still be really good. And I'm excited to see kind of the continuity of their team and the success they had last year. Alright, next I'll do number 19, Brooklyn Nets. Okay, my question for this team: can Mikal Bridges be an all-star? I think the answer is yes. Mikal Bridges was awesome when he got traded to the Nets last year, and I think he kind of showed, the role in Phoenix that he had. He was more than capable of doing more than that, and then the Nets kind of gave him the keys after they traded all their guys. And he was amazing. Can he be an all-star this season? Yes. Remember, these questions are related to this season, even if I'm talking kind of long-term for some of these teams, especially the younger teams that are rebuilding. Most of these questions are kind of thinking of the 23-24 season. And Mikal Bridges, I have said in this podcast, and Dom has referenced it, one of my favorite players. I love a good, 3-and-D wing. And he showed I'm not just a 3-and-D wing. I can do what the Tatums and Browns of the world do, right? And I don't think he's quite at that level yet, but I think he's going to get there, especially with the opportunity he's given in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, the Rockets have their pick this year, I believe. They have no reason to tank because they wouldn't have their pick. So go out there, play your guys, try to grow them, try to surprise teams, try to upset teams. I think Mikal Bridges is going to be their number one guy. I think they get to the All-Star break and they're right at a 500 team. I think he could definitely make a case for being an All-Star. Alright, next I'm going to do number 10. Golden State Warriors. Okay, one of my least favorite teams, as people probably know. Just not really because I dislike the players necessarily. Aside from Draymond, I've never been a huge Draymond guy, but just teams that have long-term success over a period of time is okay, boring, move on. Anyways, how will Chris Paul fit into their system? That's my question. I feel like Chris Paul, for his majority of his career, especially in this later part of his career where he's kind of gone from team to team to team, he kind of comes in and instills his culture. He goes to the Thunder, instills his culture. They make the playoffs. At the Rockets, I think he did a really good job of helping those guys, be a Western Conference Finals team for several years. Went to the Suns. They immediately jump up to a high seed and make the playoffs over and over again. So I think the Warriors, though, will be different because the Warriors have a system. They play through Steve Kerr. He's been coaching those guys for a while. They have Curry, they have Clay, they have Draymond. These guys love the way they play basketball, and this is going to be the first time in the later years of his career that Chris Paul doesn't come to a team that needs the structure. They already have the structure. So is Chris Paul going to get on board with that structure? Is he going to kind of learn how to play with it, or is he going to try to kind of force the Chris Paul of it all onto them? I don't think he will. I hope that he realizes he's almost 40 years old. He's on the very tail end, the last couple of years of his career. Playing with a team like the Warriors is probably the last chance he's going to have at winning a championship. Really the only thing missing from his resume. So Hopefully he can kind of get with the system and fit in. I don't think he can do all the things that a lot of Warriors players can do. A lot of off-ball movement. He's old. He's not much of a mover. He likes to have the ball in his hands. Um, but maybe he runs the bench unit when the other guys sit and then can kind of play Chris Paul ball. We'll see. I'm excited to see kind of how he'll fit another system, if he kind of buys in or if he's kind of allowed to run the bench unit in the way that he wants to. All right. Next, I'm going to click on number 30. Miami Heat. All right. My question for this team. Are the Heat going to prove the doubters wrong again? I feel like every year, Miami they have, 5 guys on their team and then a bunch of two-way guys and undrafted guys that you've never heard of, right? And then they show up in the playoffs. I think it was as the 6th seed in the bubble, maybe, or the year after the bubble. I don't remember. And beat the crap out of the Bucks. And it was like, oh wow, Miami's here. And then they show up as the 8th seed last year and make it all the way to the finals. Did he make it to the finals? Yes, they made it all the way to the finals against the Nuggets, which is crazy. As the 8th seed, never happened before. So, they proved the doubters wrong. And my question, are they going to do it again? I don't know. It's tough. Obviously, we're still waiting on Damian Lillard news. He kind of wants to go to the Heat. The Heat want him. The Heat don't really have a ton of assets to trade, aside from like Tyler Hero, but the Trailblazers don't even want Tyler Hero. So we'll see what happens. And they're old. Kyle Lowry's old. Jimmy Butler is getting up there. Kevin Love is old. They got a lot of old guys in this team. I think it makes people want to say, oh yeah, there's no way that's going to happen again. But the Heat and Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra is like the one team that it's really hard to be all the way out on. So I would say even though I just said that, I'm probably out unless they make a Damian Lillard trade. I don't really see a way this team makes another crazy run like they just did. I don't think they can really surprise anyone. I don't think they have the pieces for it. I think other teams are going to come back stronger. But you never know in Miami. Okay. Next, I'll do 12. Los Angeles Clippers. The easiest question to make out of this whole thing. Can they stay healthy for a full season? I feel like since acquiring Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, like 4 or 5 off seasons ago, they have not had a full season together, including the playoffs. Kawhi's out, PG's out, Kawhi's out, PG's out, and it sucks. It sucks because on paper, the on-paper Clippers are amazing. They've had years where it's like, wow, I don't know. They're going into, I believe a couple years ago they played like the Jazz or something like that. I think they beat the Jazz. Yeah, they did beat the Jazz, but Kawhi got injured in that series, and then they played the Suns in the conference finals. The first time they ever made the conference finals as a franchise. And they played the Suns without Kawhi. With Kawhi, that could be a different series. They could have went to the finals and played the Bucks that year. So, can they stay healthy for a full season? I doubt it. They're older. And getting older is not a great thing for your health, especially as an athlete. So, I don't really see it. I think, we'll get into the season, and unfortunately, there'll be another injury, to one of their star players, and they'll get to the playoffs as the 6th seed or something and kind of fizzle out in the second round, or at best. That would be my prediction. Okay, up next, 26, the Charlotte Hornets. Okay, let's see. Oh, yes, the question I have for them. Who's going to be their second guy? I think LaMelo's, clearly the guy. He's going to have the ball. He's going to be the one they kind of trust all the decisions with on court. Now with Michael Jordan kind of selling his part of the ownership, they still have a coach in Steve Clifford I don't love for young guys, but I think there should be a guy that kind of shows up. Is it going to be Brandon Miller, who they just took the number 2 pick? Maybe. Or is it going to be one of the other guys on the team? Is it going to be Mark Williams, who had a good year last year? Is it going to be Kai Jones, who looked really good in Summer League? Nick Smith Jr., who's a rookie, also looked really good in Summer League. They have a lot of guys on their team, and I'm just curious which one of them is going to be kind of that guy that's like, oh yeah, that's the number 2 guy on the team, and everyone else kind of falls into their roles. If I had to predict who it would be, say it's probably Brandon Miller, number 2 overall pick. I think he'll have a lot kind of thrust on his plate early, a lot of expectations, especially because Damian Lillard gets traded and Scoot is killing it in Portland. Um, you know, they're going to be like, oh, okay, Brandon Miller has something to prove to us to, show that we made the right pick. So that would be my bet, but I don't know. They got a lot of young guys on that team. A lot of guys that I think have decent potential. Charlotte's has always been kind of a dysfunctional organization, but we'll see if they can kind of start figuring out who their roles are rather than just having a group of young guys. Next, I'll do 21, Washington Wizards. Who shines this season was my question. So similar to the question I just had with the Hornets, but this is like, who's the guy now? And the example I thought of when I came up with this question was Lauri Markkanen last year on the Jazz. He was pretty much a role player on the Bulls and the Cavs, and then he went to the Jazz and kind of became their de facto number 1 guy and grew into an all-star. And I think the Wizards have potential for something like that this year. You have guys like Kyle Kuzma who have been good NBA players. They've never been, he's never been a star NBA player. They have Jordan Poole, who just came from the Warriors, who's been, at a bench role for most of his career. Is he going to become that guy? They have Tyus Jones, who really wanted a starting role. Is he going to be that guy? They have a lot of guys on this team, I think, that have something they want to prove. And there's no clear-cut number 1 person. So I feel like everyone's going to want their shot at the top. And who is that going to be? Who's going to be the surprise, like, oh my god, we didn't know this guy had it in him? If I were to bet, I would say... Oh, it's really tough. I would say probably Kuzma. Scratch that. I take that back. I think Kuzma's kind of hit his ceiling. I think it would be Jordan Poole. I think Jordan Poole's going to come in with a chip on his shoulder. Coming from the Warriors situation, coming from the Draymond Green thing, and then the year was all weird, and then he was on the bench. And I feel like he wants to be that guy, I feel like he has the confidence to be that guy. And I think the Wizards, with the amount of money he has, they're paying him, trading Chris Paul over to the Warriors for him. I think they want him to be that guy. So Jordan Poole would be my bet, but we'll see what happens. All right. Moving along here, we only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams. Okay, so I'm 20 teams through, 10 teams to go. I know I'm probably talking kind of fast. I do apologize for that if it's hard to understand what's going on. And if you're kind of confused, again, on how I'm doing it, I just have a little randomizer pulled up on my monitor over here, numbered 1 to 30. I click a number, a team appears, and then I talk about them with the question I came up with. So next, I'll do number 16, Phoenix Suns. Originally my question was about the big 3, and then I decided to change it because that's boring. Now my question: can DeAndre Ayton fulfill the role they want? I think the big thing with Ayton and his time with the Suns is he wants to be the number 1 guy. He wants to be something that I don't think he has proven he can be in the NBA. And now with Durant, with Booker, with Bradley Beal, is Ayton finally going to be like, okay, I'll be the center that you need. I'll be the rim runner. I'll be the rebounder. I'll be the defender. Rather than I'll be the guy that takes jump hooks from the elbow. And if I were to answer this question, no. I feel like his attitude in the past has kind of influences me here. Because, what they were in the finals. I mean, like, they have been at the top, and he still was like, let me be the guy. So is that going to change now that there's other all-stars on the team? I don't think so. I don't really know if that affects him. I feel like he doesn't really kind of you know, respect to the hierarchy, that their team should have, I think he's still going to want a bigger role, and he's not going to find it with the three guys they have on their team this year. All right, next, let's do 28. New Orleans Pelicans. Oh goodness, this team. My question for them: can we ever just focus on the basketball? Um, it's always something going on off the court with these guys. Starting with Zion, of course. Zion has had a ton, and I mean a ton, of injury bad luck. And all that injury bad luck is just bleh, right? He's never played like a full NBA season. Constant injuries, and it kind of derails them because their continuity is constantly off. It's like, oh, we have Zion, and then we don't. Oh, we have Zion, and then we don't. And, of course, we also had I don't even know how to speak on this, but the weird, Zion, I guess, made someone pregnant or something while he was dating someone else. I don't really know. But a lot of off-court attention with the Pelicans. Even when, CJ McCollum was traded there, I remember a media member asked him, hey, have you talked to Zion yet? And he had been on the team for a couple days at least, and he was like, no, I haven't talked to him yet. And it's just like, how does that even happen, right? I really want to focus on this team on the court, and I feel like we haven't gotten that chance because of all of the off the court drama and the injuries. Hopefully, we can eventually get a full season of CJ, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Zion, Valanciunas. Because I read that starting five out, and it's like, oh my god, that's an amazing starting five, but we can't get them on the floor together, so, we'll see. Next, I'll do number 4, Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, the question I wrote down for these guys: is Giannis about to have a revenge tour? I feel like, since the Bucks won the championship, Giannis hasn't had a large kind of offseason except for this one. It was like Eastern Conference Finals, and then they won. And then Eastern Conference Finals, and then they got out. And Giannis kind of had to carry a lot of the load because Middleton had a lot of injuries these past couple of years. And their depth has not been great either. So Giannis has been kind of putting the team on his back. And now they just got punked, and I mean absolutely punked by the Heat again. And I feel like that's going to put a big chip on Giannis' shoulder. He had a lot of time to recover in the offseason, more time than he's had in a while because he's used to the deep playoff runs. Hopefully, Middleton will be healthier. Hopefully, Drew Holiday is still kind of that all-star level he was playing at last year. I think Giannis comes back angry. I think he comes back with a fire. I think he wants to show people, nope, I'm still the guy. And I think the Bucks are, a shoe-in for the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think there's them and the Celtics. I feel so much better about than everybody else in the East. So we'll see when the season goes. But I'm looking at a inspired season from Giannis here. Okay, next I'll go number 15, the Chicago Bulls. This question was also very easy for me. When are these guys going to decide to sell? And this is who I was referencing when I was talking about the Raptors earlier. But I think the Bulls, to me, are so clearly not good enough. With LaVine, DeRozan, they just, re-signed Vucevic for whatever reason. These guys are barely, a bottom-tier, play-in team. I feel like there's no shot they finish above 6. I feel like 6 is like their ceiling. Right, and 6 seeds aside from the 1995 Rockets, they don't win the championship. And I just don't see it. I don't see, an avenue or a possibility for this team. I really don't. I don't think they have any assets to flip to get better. I feel like they need to sell. They need to rebuild. They need to get off of DeMar DeRozan while he's still a really good player, but he's 34 now. He's getting up there. Get some value for him while you can. Get some value for LaVine while you can, for Vucevic, and start over. And I think that needs to happen now. Back in our off-season video, I gave him an F because I was like, I don't understand what they're doing. So, when will they decide to sell? I don't know, but I really hope it's soon because this team is already tiresome to watch. Of course, the devastating Lonzo Ball injury, he's out for the season. But I think this era of the Bulls is over, and they need to just move on. Okay, next I'll do 18. Memphis Grizzlies. Okay, my question for them: how are they going to do without Ja? In past years, the answer was really good. I think a lot of people remember a couple of years ago, Ja was out, and they went like 22-2. And I think a big part of that was guys like Tyus Jones, who's no longer on the team. Best backup point guard in the NBA for several years, best assist to turnover ratio. He was filling in the Ja role as well as you can. Obviously, Ja has superstar talent, and Tyus Jones does not. But he was kind of really good, plug and play, and knew the system, and they kind of kept chugging along. And I think this year it'll be similar, even without Tyus Jones. They already know Ja's going to be out, right? That's an advantage. They can kind of plan for it. I think Marcus Smart fit really, really nicely in probably their starting point guard role to start the season. I think guys like Desmond Bane can take a big jump. Jaren Jackson, who just won Defensive Player of the Year, is awesome. Hopefully Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, those guys come back healthy. I think this team is going to start off the year better than people are anticipating. And then I think Ja, kind of like I just said with Giannis, is going to come in with a chip on his shoulder. He's had a lot of off-court drama this past year he's had to deal with, and now he's suspended for a quarter of the season. I think he's going to want to come in and kind of show people he's still the guy. He still can be an All-NBA type guard. And I think the Grizzlies are going to be really good. I could see this team, even without Ja for the first part, I could see him finishing as the 3 seed or the 2 seed again. All right. We only got 5 teams left. I'll go number 1. Houston Rockets. Wow. Amazing that they were number 1 on this randomizer. Okay. Houston Rockets, as everyone listening to this probably knows, I'm a big fan of. My question: how much are the veterans going to help? I think the Rockets have had a lot of locker room struggles recently, and it's because it's so young. And the veterans they did have, I don't think were culture setters. Hopefully that's going to change. I think, honestly, probably my favorite signing, my favorite signing this offseason was Jeff Green. He just won a championship in Denver. He has been to so many NBA franchises, including the Rockets before. I think he's seen a lot in the NBA, and he can kind of come in and hopefully, what I'm really, really hoping is that the guys on the Rockets are receptive. I feel like that was the issue in the past. I know Kevin Porter Jr. and Christian Wood a couple seasons ago had some issues with the coaching staff and were very vocal about it. And it's just something you can't do, especially if you plan on contributing to winning in the NBA, something the Rockets have not done recently. So I'm really excited about the Jeff Green specifically. Dillon Brooks, I'm not sure because he is kind of a question mark in terms of is he going to come in and just talk some trash that makes no sense? We don't know. And I think Fred VanVleet, obviously he had a lot of money, but I think his championship DNA from his season with Kawhi and the Raptors, his mentorship he had from guys like Kyle Lowry, I think he probably has a pretty good head on his shoulders. And hopefully can help guys like Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green with facilitating and things like that, being a starting point guard for so long. So I'm excited about those two. Dillon Brooks, I'm a little unsure. But those are kind of the 3 guys I'm looking at as the veteran, leaders now, signed in the offseason. I think 2 of them are going to be really good for us and our culture. One of them, again, Dillon Brooks, who we'll see. But I'm hoping that even if the Rockets are a 20-win team again this year, that their culture and the way they handle themselves are a lot better. All right, I got 4 teams. I'll do number 23. The Detroit Pistons. Wow. Went from Amen Thompson to Asar Thompson. The Pistons. My question I wrote: which big man is going to stand out for them? Yeah, so I think I kind of mentioned this on the podcast before, but um, it's clear the backcourt, Cade, Jaden Ivey, right? That's their point guard, shooting guard. Um, excuse me. But their big men are a question mark. They have, a couple guys I like. I think the one that will hopefully, or not hopefully because it doesn't affect me, but the one I assume is going to stand out is Jalen Duren. He's really, really young. Last year he was like the youngest player in the NBA. And I think he has a good head on his shoulders. I think he is obviously a really good defender, good rebounder. I think he can kind of fit with what they want to do with Cade and Jaden Ivey in the backcourt. And I'm also wondering how James Wiseman will be. Because that guy in Summer League looked like a monster. He just looked kind of bigger and stronger than everybody. Um, excuse me, my throat is acting up because I've been talking for an hour. But yeah, I think Wiseman can be really good. Obviously, it's not 90s basketball, it's not bully ball, it's not post ball, not Shaq basketball or anything like that. But you do still see guys like Giannis and Embiid and bigger guys. They can have success. And Wiseman has had kind of, character questions, I guess you can say, that have been a little bit of a worry. Bagley was looking okay when he got traded there. Marvin Bagley III. I think he can be good. Isaiah Stewart has been pretty good for the Pistons. I guess with him, my question is, what's his ceiling? I think all the other guys, even Marvin Bagley, who people consider a bust because he was drafted right before Luka, still has a higher ceiling than Isaiah Stewart. But I do think Isaiah Stewart can be good for them. So, which big man's going to stand out of those four guys? I'm going to go Jalen Duren, but we'll see. All right. Next, number 24, the Utah Jazz. My question I wrote down for them is Danny Ainge a mastermind? Danny Ainge, of course, the general manager of the Utah Jazz, used to be the general manager of the Boston Celtics. He was the one, I believe, that traded aging Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett to the Nets. And those turned out to be the picks that got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So it was like, oh, wow, he's awesome. And then here in Utah, he got insane packages for Donovan Mitchell and insane packages for Rudy Gobert. And I wrote this question because I was looking at their team and I was just thinking, man, I love this team. I think they're awesome, especially their young guys. Keontae George in Summer League, amazing. Even Johnny Juzang I thought was pretty good. Taylor Hendricks was injured, so I didn't get to see much of him, but I've heard nothing but good things. And they got a lot of guys. They got a lot of guys that are young, a lot of guys that are exciting. Excuse me. Jordan Clarkson has been really good in FIBA. Okay, editor Damon jumping in here for a second. I noticed the last 5 minutes of the video that I had recorded lost audio. My mic had disconnected, so I'm going to go ahead and try to redo that to the best of my ability. I was talking about the Jazz, and I ended with saying Jordan Clarkson was doing really good in FIBA, which I agree with, and I really just finished that segment up by saying that I like all their players. A lot of young talent on that team. Keontae George, Johnny Juzang, those guys that I like, Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen, a lot of fun guys, and I'm excited to see what they do next season. And then after that, I got the Philadelphia 76ers, and the question I wrote for them, what are they going to do with James Harden? And I don't know what the answer to this is. Obviously, James Harden was just trash-talking Daryl Morey, who he spent a ton of time with in Houston and Philadelphia now, while he was over at an Adidas event in China. And the 76ers have shown us in the past with Ben Simmons, they're not afraid to put their foot down. If James Harden doesn't want to show up, they'll fine him. They are in the right. He signed the contract. Especially weird that he would accept a contract and then request a trade rather than just declining the contract and signing elsewhere. But luckily for him, it's only a year, so if he does decide to do this holdout, it'd be a really ugly year, and I don't know what his value would be like. I do think he'll have a decrease in value from this regardless. Just so many, character questions now with James Harden. And it'll be difficult for him to recoup that value. Even if he does show up, I feel like he won't be 100%. He won't play. I think about the way he left Houston, how he kind of was so obvious he didn't want to be there and played not very well in the court. I feel like something similar could happen in Philadelphia, and I think they're in a tough spot. I think maybe Maxey can absorb some of that load. But yeah, if Harden is holding out or playing subpar, I don't see a good season ahead for Philadelphia. And then the last team I had to talk about was the Portland Trailblazers. So it went from the James Harden situation to the Damian Lillard situation, right? And I think the Damian Lillard one is a lot less toxic. Him and the Trailblazers have always had a good relationship. He emphasized he didn't want to be traded, even if they were rebuilding. Then they drafted a point guard in Scoot Henderson, and he said, okay, never mind, I'm out. And the question I actually wrote was not related to Damian Lillard, it was related to Scoot Henderson. The question I wrote, is he going to make the Spurs and Hornets regret who they draft? Yes, I included the Spurs, because I think for a long time there was a kind of a debate between Wemby and Scoot, and I don't think it was really a debate, more as it was like, oh, Scoot would be a number one guy if Wemby wasn't, this crazily highly touted prospect. And I talked earlier in the Spurs segment about how I think Wemby will disappoint, quote unquote, because he's not going to kind of live up to the insane hype that he has. Where I think Scoot could really be right on the money. I think if they do trade Damian Lillard and kind of give the keys over to Scoot, he could immediately be like, oh yeah, I'm that guy. And then the Spurs and Hornets are both like, oh man, we took these people instead. And of course with Wemby, he's kind of a project. It'll take time for him, I think, to get acclimated. Brandon Miller, I think he's a good player, but I don't think he has a ceiling of Scoot. So is he going to make them regret who they chose or question who they chose? And I think the answer is yes, because I think that guy's awesome. So yeah, that was my 30 for 30, a key question for every NBA team. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Without Dom, it was just me kind of rambling for an hour and going all over the place. I came up with these questions, like I said, last night. I just kind of looked into each team and was like, yeah, this is the question I have. And, I tried to answer those questions for you today. Dom will be back next week, and we will continue our ranking segments. We have small forwards to do, and then power forwards, centers. After that, we'll probably look into overall rankings, trying to predict the standings, trying to predict awards, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm really excited for that. Excited for the rest of the preseason content. Hopefully you're enjoying our show so far, coming at you once a week on Saturday. Last thing, I'll attempt the shot. I did not make it in my original take, but since there was no microphone, and I'm going to edit that part out, I'll go ahead and give you another attempt. I did make it last time, so I have made it before episode 25, which Dom predicted it would take me at least 25 episodes, which is insane, because I'm a baller. So let me go ahead and give you another attempt here. Oh wow, that was way worse than my attempt earlier. My attempt earlier hit the door that the goal is hanging on. The attempt I just threw didn't even make it to the wall. It was way short. So you actually get a worse attempt from me in the retake. So unfortunate. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, Spotify, whichever one you're not currently listening to this on. Leave 5 stars on Spotify, like us on YouTube, leave comments, answer the polls on Spotify that we have, the questions, all that. We love engagement, and we want to hear back from you. So yeah, this was an episode of D&D's two-man game. Buckets.